The technology landscape is exploding, and it has never been a better time to be an entrepreneur. There's so much information out there, it can be hard to know where to start or who to trust. Your host, David Paul, is a seasoned venture capital investor that has founded his own investment firm, DWP Capital. He's a straight shooter that cuts through all the noise to bring you real and authentic conversations with investors, founders, and operators in the startup ecosystem. Join him each week to stay current with today's trends and get smarter about startups and tech investing.
Hey everybody, this is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast, where we talk to founders, operators, and investors about all things value creation. We're coming up on over close to 52 episodes. I don't know what number. I think we're in our 40s right now. Today, I'm talking to Bobby Brannigan, which is a lovely Irish name. Bobby hails from New York. He is the CEO and founder of a vertical-specific marketplace called Mercato. This is his second go-around. Prior to that, he was in another vertical marketplace, which is Valor Books, which, we're going to talk a lot more about that. Bobby is in San Diego, and he plays in a beer league for hockey. So, Bobby, you won last night, huh?
We won. They crushed them, like 10-2 or something.
Oh, it's
Great.
A blowout.
Yeah.
Are those all your teeth? Like, are you like a big hockey player?
That one is a fake one. Yeah, I lost a few. Actually, I lost them all in the adult league. When I played hockey growing up, I never lost teeth. But then in adult league, I lost 2 times. I got them knocked out. One time they put the same one back in, and another one they had to replace it. So,
yeah, that's
good old beer league.
And so like, you say you grew up playing hockey, yeah?
Yeah, grew up playing. Started playing roller hockey in the streets of Brooklyn. And then started playing ice hockey in Coney Island, actually. They have an ice rink right on the pier in Coney Island.
Very cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Mercato first? And, I'd love to kind of talk about kind of where you found, the value proposition there. And, I think to tell the Mercato story, you probably have to tell the Valor story. So I'd love to kind of hear about your background and starting those two companies.
Great. So on the Mercato side, we're an e-commerce platform for independently owned grocery stores. We make it very easy for them to sell online. It's a turnkey model. All they do is give us a file of their inventory or connect us with their POS company. We integrate. We do the marketing. We build a website. We have third-party delivery networks that we integrate with. And they're online, up and running, and driving sales. So it's really a new channel for the store to expand their business into e-commerce.
Very cool. Very cool. And what made you get that idea to work with independent groceries? Where was the pain point there, and what got you interested in it?
I guess that ties back to the story. So, I grew up in Brooklyn, as you're talking about, and my family has a grocery store there for over 45 years before I was born, and started working in the store when I was 8 years old, stocking the shelves and delivering groceries, even back then. Still doing it today. So worked in the store, and then, worked in the store up until college. And then I decided to go away to school. And then when I went away to school, I ended up getting into e-commerce, into an e-commerce business myself. Rather than, joining the family business, I did my own thing, and built a textbook company, bootstrapped it over the course of, in total, 13 years. And then when I came back into my dad's store, 13 years later, I saw everything was still in the Stone Age, really. He had no point of sale system, no social media, no website, no e-commerce. So I said, Dad, I'm going to just build you the platform you need. So I did the homework, and I said, all right, is there any software platform out there that could do this for him? Can Shopify do this? Can Wix do this? Can any of the platforms do it? None of the platforms could handle the nuances of, fast-moving, perishable products, local delivery. So we decided to build a platform for my dad, and we realized that as we started thinking about the architecture, we realized there's 50,000 stores just like him, and how great would it be to help them all? So that's when it was really was born, because we just saw the need for my dad, wanted to build it, and then why not make it available to everyone? Basically came to.
So when did you feel like you had the entrepreneurial itch? I mean, you seem kind of like a hardened Brooklyn kid. You've probably been into a lot of fights. Like I'm soft, so you just seem like you just had, like a harder type of background. I never saw, did you think about wanting to get into technology at an early age?
Well, it was interesting. So growing up in Brooklyn, as I realized getting older and living other places, it was very different from other places. And also the era in the 90s when the internet was booming. I was in the 90s. I was growing up working in my dad's store, and at the time there were people that came in the store one day in a Toyota Corolla, and the next day they came in a Ferrari. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And this was the boom of the stock market. There were people that were stockbrokers. They were making all sorts of money, in the stock market one way or another. And it got me interested in the stock market. So I remember as a kid, I don't remember exactly how old I was, like 14 or 15 years old. Somebody came in the store and they were telling me about a hot stock. And I said, Dad, could I buy this stock? And I ended up buying $500 in this stock. It ended up being a pump and dump stock that basically essentially over a year later went to nothing. But it got me into looking at publicly traded companies at a young age. And then when I went away to school, it was at the time, internet was really taking off. And I was into trading internet stocks. And the more I did my homework and research those companies, one of the companies that was the biggest inspiration for me was seeing Half.com. I don't know if you heard of Half.com, but it was founded by a guy named Josh Koppelman, one of the founders of First Round Capital, one of the big VC. And he founded this company, Half.com, and within less than a year, they sold it for like $350 million. And I was trading stocks and trying to turn, a dollar into two. And I was like, wait a second. You can have an idea and people will give you money to build the idea, and you can sky's the limit. Like you can work really hard and make a ton of money instead of having a job where you have to climb the ladder for decades. So in college, that's when I decided I'm going to build a company. But it was originally I saw people making a lot of money in the stock market. So I thought I would be like a, investment analyst.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I went to school for.
But even though you saw the Half.com story, your first business, Valor, was a bootstrap business. So can you just say was that intentional? Was there just a lack of capital? What was your thinking kind of around that and the company building?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a different world then. And also my perception, I didn't know a lot about this stuff, right? And it was in 2000 that I started the company out of my dorm room. And I actually thought I could build a company without any investors. I thought, we could just build it from scratch. And I've always been very scrappy in terms of building stuff. And what we actually did when we started the company is I moved into the substance-free dorm on my campus where all the engineers lived.
I love that story.
I was the only not-engineer living in the substance-free dorm building that had no RAs. And people were up until 4 a.m. playing video games and stuff. And I convinced a lot of people in the building to build a company with me. I also was buying and selling books to make money to build the technology. So I guess coming from Brooklyn, I had this hustler mindset of I don't need other people's money. And also growing up in Brooklyn, there's a different stigma around using other people's money. It's something that people are more reluctant to do because Brooklyn is a place where you don't want to owe someone money and not be able to pay them. So I've always been in the mindset of I'm going to make the money myself and build my own thing. So that's what I did in college. I was flipping books. I was knocking on doors. I had a team of people. We would go in door to door in the dorms. We'd buy a book for 20, sell it for 50 on the internet, and we do that 1,000 times over, and we use that money to build our company.
Wow. And then how big did Valor get before you sold it?
So we ended up growing to about $100 million in sales.
Whoa! Wow!
Over 13 years. So it was so many learnings. We were talking a little bit when the day we met several months ago in Del Mar. I was telling you a little bit about some of the stories that we went through. But one of the key parts to it is that when you're operating with a shoestring budget, where if you don't make money or if you make a mistake, it's fatal. You have to be very careful. And we had certain situations that almost took us under a dozen times. One time we got sued by all 4 of the biggest publishers simultaneously. Like Pearson Thompson, Wiley, and McGraw-Hill teamed up to sue us for like $8 million. And I was like, we never raised equity funding, but I did borrow money from a lot of places. Like I started very old school, like family, friends, people from the neighborhood. I borrowed a lot of money, credit cards. So, you know, we had situations where like, oh, we got sued. Got to figure this out. But, you know, we got frauded, you know, as we were building the company. And it was not something that was dissimilar to other companies. Actually, a person that was in my neighborhood that I got to know was the CEO of Barnes & Noble. And I sat down with him once and I told him about my fraud experience in terms of like when we got frauded. He's like, the same thing happened to us. The fraudsters found our website. They started buying stuff with fraudulent credit cards from multiple IP addresses. So I called up our team and we worked until like midnight, until like the next day to build fraud software on the fly. So it was like lots of experiences. But yeah, we built the company. It was a real roller coaster. It's like stories for years.
Yeah, no, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to Mercato, where you're building, you described it as an e-commerce store. But most of the revenue was transactional. Is that correct?
Yes, it's mostly transactional revenue. There is a SaaS component, but the SaaS is relatively small.
Right. And then also, like, you're not housing the inventory. You're not like the purveyor of the goods and services. So, you know, I would describe your business more as a marketplace than an e-commerce business. Am I thinking about that correctly?
Yeah. Yeah, it's more of a marketplace platform.
Yeah. So when thinking about creating like a marketplace platform, like I've never done a marketplace. I feel like it's just one of those extremely complex, hard things to get off the ground and get moving because it's not recurring in nature, as opposed to a SaaS business. And I talk to a lot of investors that play in B2B SaaS, and they tell me the exact same thing. But that being said, they say that their best returns have been marketplaces. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's really funny. They're all like, yeah, we have the same inclination about marketplaces. We have the same fears. But if you look at our performance, it seems that marketplaces have outperformed within their portfolio. So tell me a little bit about, you know, the challenges of getting this marketplace kind of velocity up and going, and how do you think about supply and demand, the chicken and the egg issues?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Like the way I thought about it in the past and the way I think about it now are a little bit different. When I first decided to build my first marketplace, what I really liked about it is that as an entrepreneur, you can build a really big business with a small amount of capital if you want to hustle, but you have to hustle. Right. So when you start a marketplace, it's not easy to convince people to participate, especially the supply early on. Right. So that's the challenge. But if you're willing to hustle, if you're willing to figure out ways and how you can create a unique value proposition for that audience, you can do it. So that's just one of the reasons why I liked it early on is that, you know, I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I actually didn't even finish college because the company was doing well. So I just kept going on it. But, you know, one of my strongest attributes is my hustle and my resilience. So I thought, hey, let's leverage our greatest strengths to do what we can do best. And then I put together a team that was also strong and resilient. So, you know, learned a lot from that. But I think that as I've gotten more experience with marketplaces is that you really have to have an advantage on one side of it. And whether you have a way to get the supply or the way to get the demand, I always think the demand is more valuable. If you had demand, you could plug in the supply because who doesn't want access to the demand? Right. But it's really having solutions on one side or another of the platform.
Yeah. So you need to have an edge specifically on the investor front where you can actually say with confidence that you've got the value proposition in order to feel like you can kind of get some traction. Yeah.
And definitely have learned a lot more as well. We have a really awesome investor. His name is Lukasz Godowski. If you've heard of him, he's one of the founders of Delivery Hero. And I spent a bunch of time with him. And one of the things that he taught me, and a lot of people will speak about this similarly, but when you have a marketplace, you just want to look at like a really tight region and tight cohorts to see where it's blooming and what you're doing right, and then replicate that instance. So that's another part of it, is just, not trying to go too broad when you start and going in a real tight segment and get a really strong network effect in a really small segment, whether it's a product category or it's a geographic region, but just being in a place where you can really be successful with a network effect.
How did you, what are the levers that you would see in a marketplace where you would see like, oh, okay, this test worked better than that test? Like, what are some of the variables in a marketplace business model?
So I would say it comes down to, in a consumer marketplace, or whatever the customer is on the demand side, is looking at the retention of the cohorts. That's what it ultimately comes down to. Looking at people from month 1 and how many are sticking in month 6, right? So if you're able to get an audience where they're just loving your product and they keep on coming back and the retention rate is super high, you have something special. Because at the end of the day, you really have to have, for a consumer acquisition, you have to have a high enough long-term value LTV to be able to grow fast and be able to acquire customers. So if you have a marketplace that's effective, you're seeing really high retention rates. And it really comes down to looking at that cohort data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when you're thinking about like velocity of transactions, like I was reading something, I get so much shit in my email box, but I was reading one thing that seemed pretty interesting. It had to do with Craigslist and its success over certain other marketplaces like eBay. And Craigslist actually, I think, outperformed in less densely populated areas because the amount of transactions was small. Like the supply and the demand was a smaller in quantity. Whereas, if you were to try to put like a Craigslist, or like an eBay, for instance, if you try to put an eBay within a local small community, the person there'd be less demand for a person looking for a used bike as opposed to like a Craigslist. So, figuring out like the velocity of the transactions, I'm sure is pretty important. So how did you think about that in the grocery setting?
In terms of like the density of the areas, like regions.
Yeah. And as far as like, how did you think about like, what were you telling your suppliers that like what they could expect from a velocity perspective?
Mm-hmm. So I think, what we did is we focused really on dense urban areas for a lot of reasons. With our business model, it was a way where we could drive down price, because when you're in a dense urban area, you can batch deliveries and you can drive down the cost of delivery to make it really cost effective for people. So there's a lot of value in like the dense urban areas. We also went after the highest quality stores. So this was another one because we said, hey, these are the stores people want to order from. This is where the demand is. So early on in the company, we would look at ratings and reviews on Google. We would also look at, do they have a website? Do they already have traffic? Is there like pent up demand for their product? And, there's lots of different ways to do this for marketplace to understand where's the pent up demand. But what you want to do is you want to bring supply online that people care about, that they want. And you can leverage that data on, all over the internet to figure out where the right supply is. But when we went to the stores and telling them, what the demand would be, it was more so around like the industry is going online. And one of the factors I remember from like my dad's store, for example, is that it feels like in my mind, the day I told my dad about this, there was a Fresh Direct truck driving down the street in front of our store for the first time. And I was like, we got to do this now, Dad. Fresh Direct is coming to our neighborhood and they're going to try to take our customers. We must build this. So it was really a lot of the grocery stores, it's been in response to competition. Brick and mortar local businesses are competitive animals where it's, if competition comes in, they're going to be aggressive to push them out. So it was less so about the volume. It was more so around protecting the business. I guess volume is more of the play now, but from the beginning, it was really like, you need to give your customers this convenience or somebody else will.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like a defensibility play.
Hmm. Exactly.
So and now the business, I mean, COVID happened, which was a ginormous spike in the business. And then, I know that there's a newer kind of pivot that you were doing, which I found extremely fascinating and very impactful. So love to hear that story.
Yeah. So, really excited to tell this. And we're going to be announcing a new program next week that we're rolling out called Mercato Thriving Communities around this. But, our business, started as a platform for the grocery stores to get online. And we felt as though the marketplace was the best place to do that because you can more effectively drive customers to it because you have options of lots of stores. You can create a delivery membership, which creates a lot of value where, hey, you could buy, in New York City, we have 350 stores. You can sign up and you can get free delivery from any of the stores by being a member. So it's a really strong value prop. So that was really, that model, and then advertising in Google and Facebook to really drive in new customers. So, that's really where we were focused. And for us during COVID, that was a great opportunity because in the beginning of COVID, the CACs were super low, and people were retaining really strongly. And then what happened in, I would say early last year, and this is pretty exciting, but the New York City EDC came to us and said, hey, can you help us? You guys specialize in bringing locally owned grocery stores online. Can we partner with you and get more of them on your platform? And obviously we said, of course. They came in as an awesome partner. We grew stores. We made it more cost effective for them to get online in partnership with the city. And then from there, the New York City's Mayor's Office of Food Policy came to us and said, wait, we have all these food access programs that we have. Can we have them powered by locally owned stores? And we said, of course, we love that idea. How would we build that? What do you need? What are the requirements?
Yeah.
Right. So we did all that and we spent our time with them, and we've created our own digital wallet concept. People can order on the platform without a credit card. We formed a partnership with the Mayor's Office of Food Policy, Department of Health, and we're helping people in need get food access through the platform. So that program, it got us really excited for a couple of reasons. One is because, damn, it's our mission, exponentially, like from where we originally were, where we started off wanting to help people like my dad, locally owned businesses, be successful, be online, be competitive. But now, our mission is enhanced where we're also, helping people who need food access. And we're also helping reduce the rate of chronic disease because we're implementing nutritional incentive programs where people that order with SNAP, they're able to get more fresh produce. Essentially, if you buy fresh produce, you get double the produce for the same amount of money. So like 50% off essentially the produce we're going to be rolling out. So it's really exciting. It's like, the mission enhanced, but helping the stores, creating local jobs, providing food access, and especially to people that have chronic diseases. So that's really, that partnership with New York City got us thinking in a whole new way. And it's one of these things I think that, it's a dream for a founder where somebody coming to you with a big, hard problem that nobody has solved that you can solve, right? And we did it, we solved it, we partnered, we enhanced our technology in so many ways. Our website is now in 12 languages. It meets federal requirements of, security and privacy. We, all sorts of aspects to be able to gain federal funding. And now what we're doing is we're in conversations with about a half a dozen cities to roll out the same type of partnerships as New York.
So, in short, you're taking government assisted dollars, right? Or like quote unquote, I don't know if this is the right terminology, but food stamps or ETH or whatever they call it, and you're pumping that through your platform, whereas individuals can buy the groceries that they need in a way that is much, much easier. They don't have to carry around a card. They don't need to recharge the card. The government is getting full transparency on what people are buying. There can be limits on, things that are probably not super healthy for them, and, don't have nutritional value or empty calories. I think there's a ginormous opportunity to work with some of these payers, these healthcare payers, because I think the term is social determinants of health, right? Where people's healthcare is so contingent upon so many different aspects of their life, and food security is one of them, that you can actually pipe into these health payers and they can offer this as a benefit for the people that, are determined, well, they're not taking their meds because they don't even know where their next meal's coming from. So, you fix the meal problem, chances are they're not going to be hungry and worried about their next meal, and they're going to worry about getting their prescription.
Yeah. And let me unpack some of that. So just for clarity, so there is federal nutritional assistance. And the biggest federal nutritional assistance program is known as SNAP, also formerly known as food stamps, SNAP EBT, right? So this program is enormous. It's almost $200 billion. And tens of millions of Americans are on SNAP to buy food. Recently, they've created the capabilities to buy with SNAP Online. And we are in the process of rolling out SNAP Online for locally owned grocery stores. Now, that is a huge benefit for people that need food access, to be able to get it ordered online and get it delivered to their home. However, that's one thing we're doing, but we're also going after larger opportunities here, just as you suggested, healthcare, private, public healthcare, city programs. There's dozens of programs the city has around providing food access to people. There's nonprofits, there's foundations, there's all sorts of groups that have all of these different programs, and a lot of them lack high utilization numbers. So to give you an example, if you had food at a food bank, and I'm somebody who needs food access, how do I know where that food bank is? How do I know when they open? How do I know if they have food? How do I know how much food they have? Can I get there every day that I need food, right? So, and the food is limited, right? Do I want to eat potatoes and carrots again? Like I got that last time, right? So with our platform, we're removing all the friction. We're letting them go on and order online to meet the cultural appropriateness for those people. Whether they, like to eat certain foods, if you have the fruits and vegetables they like, they're more likely to eat them. If you're kosher, if you're halal, whatever it is. For example, in New York City, we have it all. We have 350 stores meeting all the needs of New Yorkers. So it's really taking all these small fragmented programs and aggregating them all to a single platform to make food access easy for healthy food.
That's incredible. What a great story. And what a founder's dream is that there's the demand here. They just need a technology wedge to make this happen.
Yeah. And, the same thing happened with my last company. We were thinking ourselves, like, what can we build? What can we build? How will it work? And then we ended up spending time with our top customers, and they told us what they needed. And then we grew 5x in a year and a half. So it's almost like I've been waiting for this moment of like the market opportunity to come to us to tell us what they need. And then we just intensely listen and build with passion exactly what their biggest dreams are. Like if they had a magic wand, what do we build? This is what we're doing. We need to find this customer, and we believe that cities and healthcare and nonprofits, food banks, food pantries, they have the burning problem that we can partner with them and solve.
It's amazing how that works, isn't it? That, the closer you get to the customer, the easier it is to build product. I mean, it's so funny. I see so many founders, they spend millions and millions of dollars putting out code that without really much, if any, customer interaction. And, you really can be a destroyer of capital if you don't have a good ear, and like you're missing the opportunity to build true equity value in your company if you're not having those deep conversations.
Yeah, and an example of my last company, my last business was a little bit strange because we were a renegade business, in a sense, because what happened was that we were making used textbooks easily purchasable online, and a lot of people were very upset about that. The publishers obviously hated it because they didn't want people like a more efficiency of used textbooks, but also the college bookstores hated it because they were selling books for $150 and then you could buy them online for $50. So when we started signing up college bookstores, and then they would sign up on our platform as like Joe's Books, right? It wasn't the name of the school. They didn't want
Right.
anybody to know that the school bookstore was selling the same books online for like a third of the price that they're selling in the bookstore because those books weren't selling anymore. So in the beginning of our company, we actually had our customers didn't want to talk to us because they wanted to remain anonymous. Like they wouldn't even want us to know that it was a certain university, right? So we actually got into this mode of not talking to the customer, and also it's knowing who your customer even is. You know, when we started the company, I thought the college student was our customer, like in the first company. And then I realized, no, it's the bookstore. It's the independent college bookstore. And then as we, you know, I think one of the words that you mentioned is that like building a better relationship, a phrase you mentioned, but like as you got to know the customer better and they trusted you, they would open up to you. So as we evolved and we became more credible, I always remember like a steak dinner, and this person knows who this is, but like a steak dinner in Little Rock, Arkansas, with a big book, independently owned book company. He said, hey, I said, how can we help, you know, expand with you guys? And he goes, well, first of all, we don't really need you guys that much. We could sell books on Amazon. We sell on you guys because it like de-risks us, like so we're not dependent on Amazon. So I said, well, listen, how can I help you make money? How can I help you grow your business? And he's like, help me buy books. Help me get my hands on more books. And I immediately, because I was thinking about this for like 6 or 7 years and like of all the things we could do, I'm like, I can do that. I can build this, this, and this. Would you do it? Yes. I would buy an unlimited amount of books through your platform. So we then created a reverse marketplace where people were putting in bid prices and buying books. And then we ultimately created a futures market for college textbooks to pre-buy books that the buyer would get at the end of the semester. But the moral of the story is that it took a while to build relationship with the customer and to understand who the customers were that were the early adopters that would lean in if you had a new great idea. And I think that's where we got to now with grocery, is that they're coming to us and be like, you've been helpful to us. Can you build us more stuff that we've always wanted? And that's the gold. Like when people ask you, like, I really want this. That's like the 100 net promoter score, right? Like,
yeah, because they're giving you the keys, right? They're giving you a piece of their budget, right? And like they're telling you to get in. So how do you get to that point with a customer?
I think one of it, some people do it out of the gates, like, you know, building that credibility. Like I remember I listened to a podcast with Max Levchin talking about a firm and how early on he went to the founder of 1-800-Flowers and said, hey, if I build this thing called buy now, pay later, would you embed it in your checkout? And he's like, yeah. So like he actually got conviction and went around before he even, I don't know what stage he was at, like how far the product was built.
Sure.
But it depends on like, you know, how your network is and how experienced you are. But talking to the customer and figuring out, you know, riffing with them, what do you need? And as you get more experience and more of a network, you can do that. But if you're like coming out of college or, you know, you don't have a network, it's about anything, like building a relationship, building a reputation, showing people that you say you're going to do something, you do it, and then also spending time with that customer. You know, we fly out, we sit down with the customer, hey, how's it going? Checking in, what are we doing wrong? What can we do better? So I think the relationship building is really, really important. And then, you know, you want to try to fish it out of them to try to figure out, like, is there anything that you really need? And then they might start thinking about it and tell you a year later of like, oh, Bobby asked me once if there's any technology and I just got an idea. So it's really like getting your best customers, having that relationship, but also letting them know what your vision is. So if they know what your vision is, include them. Include them in helping you build it for them. Because, you know, especially with my first company, like, you know, stupidly, I thought I knew it all. Like, I know what they want better than them. They can't visualize what they need. But the reality is, depending who you're working with, I mean, maybe in a brand new industry, it's never existed before, but if you want to interface with an existing market, they've thought about it a lot more than you have.
Yeah.
Like, what would help them?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. So it's so incredible. So what's like a one piece of business advice you would give a founder that's trying to build this marketplace? and to build the demand and the supply side. Like, if you were to say, like, conventionally, anecdotally, like, what's the biggest lesson that you learned?
So I'll share a couple of tidbits. One of the people that I've examined that are very successful marketplace builders are Rocket Internet, the Rocket Internet team. And I've studied and I've hired people from Rocket Internet before to understand, like, where do they go? How do they build? What do they build? And I think the best piece of advice is that when you build something, test, and don't be afraid to pivot. Finding out where the right turf is to launch your initial market with the right customers is really key, so that you can get those really great unit economics. And another example of this is like Wonder with like Mark Laurie. Like, he got like a neighborhood in New Jersey, and he saturated the whole neighborhood, and everybody's utilizing, the LTV to CAC is amazing, LTV insane due to the retention, but figuring out how to start small. And then when you start small, like, don't scale unless you have that, that retention, and you could also look at the Net Promoter Score. Let people love what you have and then scale it. And then the other thing I would just throw out there, as I was mentioning, is that, like, gotta talk to the customer. You do not know it as much as they know their business. And if you could let them know what you bring to the table and you can respect what they do, they'll give you the gold of what to build for them. And the goal is a win-win for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I so completely agree with that. I feel that so many startups, because they hear, scale, 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 right? That's like the mantra, we're built to scale. All we need to do is turn it on. We just need to raise this money. We're going to scale. And I think of a startup essentially is the building blocks to getting to a scaled company, but you're really a small business. Right? I mean, you need to fight tooth and nail. You are doing founder-led sales. You're doing personal phone calls. You need to make sure that those customers are raving fans, and you're going to lose money on them. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, especially if, you're venture backed.
Yep.
In order to overservice and to get what you need, which is the gold, which is really the roadmap.
Yep. Yeah. It's really interesting. Doing this for a while, you learn a lot, and you look back at all the time you wasted on the wrong things. So you tend to get smarter because our scarcest resource is our time. And like my last company, I spent 13 years, and like 80% of it was me thinking I knew it all. And then I was like put in my place and felt good because then the company accelerated when I was put in my place. But I paid the price of not listening,
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Bobby, thank you so much for coming on. Loved your story.
Of course.
I think that what you're doing is actually super incredible. I love this, direction that you're going on, addressing food insecurity, through data, through, leveraging software. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Capital Stack. If you liked it, please like it, comment, subscribe. And we will see you next week. We drop an episode every Tuesday on all your major platforms, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And we will see you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Capital Stack Podcast. Make sure to share this with someone you know that can benefit from this content. Remember to support this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. David Paul is the founder and general partner at DWP Capital. All opinions expressed by David and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of DWP Capital. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. David and guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed on this podcast.